Do you want to introduce yourself, or do you want me to give the little spiel?
Yeah, I could introduce myself. Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, since I'm already unmuted. Thanks for having me. I'm really sorry about the time zone mix-up. I thought I had accounted for it, but so I'm in Denver, Colorado. I'm in Mountain Time. It's very cold here, as I think it is where you all are at right now. I've only been to Chicago once. It was a very short stint. I took a Greyhound to Iowa and spent a couple hours in the Chicago bus terminal. So I really need to make it out to to Chicago and Naperville once it's safe to do so again. I so my formal title is product owner at DevCollaborative, which is a web agency that specializes in WordPress and Drupal sites for nonprofit organizations. And within that, my areas of focus are content strategy and user experience design. And I've been working in this field professionally for 11 years. And then before that, as like a hobbyist, making websites for various community groups and organizations just for fun. So been on the web for a long time. Yeah, so that's a bit about me. And I'll just kind of get right into it. So as I'm going, if you have questions, feel free to just leave them in the chat as they come up for you. And there's a couple of good, just like natural, positive, like transitions from different subtopics that I'll just stop and see if there's any questions that have come up for each of those sections. And then of course, at the very end, any further discussion we can do as well. So let me get into it. Get in presenter mode here. Okay, you all seeing that slide? Good. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome to this topic, writing for the web, which really is more like designing content for the web. And WordPress has been doing a good job of this as a content management system with like I heard you all before my talk discussing about the Gutenberg blocks a bit and the old classic interface. And so I think that Gutenberg approach is kind of reaffirming this idea of it's not just writing, it's really kind of designing content altogether. So I'm going to talk first about how people read on the web, or how people don't really read on the web. And I would characterize it more as there's a lot of hunting for answers. And yet, you know, much of online content is still written like we would write for print. And so when I say we hunt for answers, I can share a couple of examples of what I mean. So, you know, a common approach we take is what can be called the F pattern. And here's a heat map that's was eye tracking software actually looking at where people are looking on the page. And so it's called the F pattern because it's pretty common for us to read the first and second lines of text and then kind of skim down the page, primarily on the left-hand side, at least for us in English, reading left to right, and looking for keywords that are relevant to what we're looking for. And oftentimes pausing it at headings and subheadings And so it's sort of making an F down the page. We can also see this with videos. So let's see if I can play this video. So, we can see this with a phone, and so you can kind of see that this person. So this is again eye tracking software. They're looking. You can't see the text, but that's okay. That's not really important. It's more about the patterns here, right? Like look at all of the kind of skipping around. It's not this linear just plowing through reading like you would when you pick up a book or a magazine. Other patterns that that user researchers have found, there's the layer cake, which is scanning the headlines, the spotted pattern, so hunting for keywords, links, and digits. And one thing that's interesting to note is that digits stand out to us more than if they're written out in word form, like 1000. If it's 1000, that we notice those numbers, I think, because there's a break from the pattern of words, full words. Another common approach is the marking pattern, where you focus on one point on the screen as you scroll down. So it might be like the center of the screen, and you're kind of scanning around. So we all have our own sort of personal approaches, and it can vary a little bit depending on the task at hand. But those are the gist, though, is that we're really hunting around for the information that we want first, and assessing whether is this page that I'm on relevant to me, and am I going to find the information that I need. And there's one important exception to that, which is if I'm reading something in a language that I'm not very proficient in, either it's my native language and I just have a lower literacy level, or it's a very maybe I'm reading an academic article that I'm not used to, or it's outside of my area of expertise, or if it's a second language. So for me, I know some Spanish. I know enough to be able to read the news sometimes, or I'll even stumble. It's kind of funny in the Wikipedia world, for example. The amount of information on different topics will vary from language to language. And sometimes if I'm trying to keep up on what's happening in South America, for example, the Spanish language article is a lot better than the English language article. But I have to do this, what's called the commitment pattern, where you do read everything on the page, because for me, reading Spanish, I can understand it, but I'm not fluent enough that I can just hunt around and look for keywords and decide if it's something, a page that's worthy of my time or not. So that is, if you do have a multilingual audience, or you have an audience with a lower literacy level, then that is something to keep in mind. But overall, it's that hunting approach. And so as a result, we should be giving those hunters what's called an information scent. So what is an information scent? It's using the different elements available to us on the web to really pull out the keywords and the key information that people are looking for. So titles, one of the first things that we read on a page. Headings and subheadings. Lists are easy to scan. Pull quotes to pull out meaningful points that are being made in an article, for example. Using the strong tag for important words and phrases. I would say the best advice, and it's very simple, but it's very powerful for writing for the web, is be clear on who your audience is. Get to know your audience. Think about what are the words that they have in their head. And this also reinforces search engine optimization. What are the keywords that people are thinking of and using when they search and when they're hunting around, to decide if the page that they're on is going to help them. So avoid only using jargon intentionally, if at all. And then avoiding the very popular but kind of a no-no of click here for links. Instead, it should be read the annual report, or just have a donate on our fundraising page, or read the entire question and answer session. And then that digits for numbers trick brings attention to that information. And the nice thing about, and I'll just make one more thing, and maybe you've heard this before, of using headings, using pull quotes, using lists instead of just a comma separated listing it out in a long sentence. These things break up the page so that it's easy to scan, and so it's not a giant wall of text where our eyes start to glaze over. And the nice thing about this is that really everyone benefits from it. Using more structured text, using things like headings, is good for screen readers. Screen readers have the ability, so this is for those who are sight impaired. And so if they're reading it aloud, you have the option to skip down to different headings. So if you're breaking your page up into different headings and someone is looking for a particular piece of information within a larger article or page, they can skip a heading if they're like, listen to that heading, I'm not interested in that. Maybe the next heading will have what I need, and they can skip onto that. It's better for people where English is a second language. Again, just breaking up the text, anchoring kind of the talking points to the page. It's easier to translate. It's better for search engines. When you are using headings, you're giving it more semantic, there's a semantic value to it there. And so if I'm writing an article about 3D printers, and I'm writing about the kind of filament that my 3D printer uses, if I'm putting that in a heading, then that's giving more importance to filament, or this, whatever the specific heading is. Let's say you're using a cutting edge material, so that if someone's then searching for that, the fact that you've put that into a heading 2 element, for example, that's the Google and other search engines are gonna, when they scan that page, is gonna say, oh, there's something really important about this particular kind of filament. So when someone searches for that, that's gonna be higher up in the relevancy than if that was just a single, wall of text, where anytime you're talking about this kind of filament, it has the same value as any other word on the page. It's also, there's a lot more of this happening with artificial intelligence, with Siri and Google Assistant. And, when we type a question now into Google, we get back a little snippet answer. If you're, if you're structuring your content to answer some of these questions, there's a better chance that your website is going to get picked up to be the one to answer that. Or if you're using some kind of voice assistant, same kind of thing. And it's easier for all of us to read and access information that way. And so I guess I'll stop there. That's a good kind of natural pause and see if, I don't know, Claire, are there any questions so far, or should I just keep trucking along?
No questions so far.
Okay, great. So to dive in a little bit more on a point I made earlier of writing for your audience, oftentimes we don't actually know who our own target audience is, which maybe sounds off or surprising, but I've actually found this to be quite common in my line of work. We usually have at least some kind of sense of it, but when I start asking, who, and kind of trying to drill in, a lot of times that can be a little vague. And also, things change over time. Sometimes there are new audiences that arrive. People get older, new people get born. The Gen Z audience, for example, is kind of a newer audience, but it's kind of coming into their own, for example. And so one activity that I really like to do is develop what are called personas. So a persona is a fictitious but realistic representation of an audience group boiled down into a single character or person. And so this is an example of 3 personas that an organization I worked with developed. So this is for the Bay Area Legal Services. And they're a legal aid organization in Tampa Bay, Florida, and that surrounding area. And their website at the time was written by lawyers, written pretty much for lawyers. A lot of jargon, a lot of legalese, very dense, very difficult to understand if you weren't a lawyer. And their primary audience, as you can see, are their clients who are not lawyers, didn't go to law school. A lot of them are immigrants from various countries where, so English is their second language. Then they do have a secondary audience of fellow lawyers who want to volunteer. And then a third audience, which are donors. And so you can, the screenshot I have is a very simplistic. It's kind of occupation, age. I like to go in a little bit further, and we did with these. This is just a screenshot of partially the personas, but yeah, drafting like what are their motivations for coming to your site and using your services or products? What might get in the way of that? What concerns do they have? Those sorts of relevant kind of sociographic and demographic information about those folks. And another thing is, when drafting these, it's really great to just directly talk to people from those audience groups, so you're not making assumptions about them that might be incorrect. And so just a little bit more, at least about people here in the US, 43% of adults living in the US, so about 93 million people, have basic or below basic literacy skills. And here you can see how that kind of drops down. And so, that's important to keep in mind. And it's going to vary depending on what you do and what your website is about. But there's a good chance that that a lot of your audience is going to be at a lower literacy level, and that's important to take into account. And there's also a lot of people where, English is their second or third language. And so some tips specifically for this demographic is, put essential information first. That they are that one exception to the rule of hunting around quickly, right? And you really do, if the more difficult it is to read English for someone, then the more you are going to stick to reading every single word. And so if there's some really important information that you want to have on a page, put that first. Idioms and slang can be really hard to understand if you're not familiar with those. Phrasal verbs like the alarm goes off also can be confusing when you're translating from your native language and you're reading this in English. Figures of speech, like I'm all ears. My partner is Russian American, and she was telling a story about how she was teaching in front of a class, and she was telling the story to her grandparents who only speak a little bit of English. And she told them, she used the phrase "all eyes on me," and her grandparents were very, very weirded out by that. Just imagining like taking your eyeballs and putting them on a person, and just like was so confused by that figure of speech. And this is, yeah, very funny moment. So there's a lot of that going on, or complicated future tenses. If you were going to contest an eviction, you would do such and such. And that one's kind of true for all of us, even if we can normally read that in a book or an article. When you're trying to skim and scan and hunt for information, that really slows us down as far as like, and puts a high cognitive load on us. So using visual cues like diagrams and icons is helpful. And again, this is helpful for people where we have a PhD, if we're an English professor. And so, general audience, 8th grade reading level is kind of what most Americans are reading at. And we can read that text pretty easily. If you do have a more lower literacy audience, then going down to even a 5th grade reading level is ideal. And then just simple sentences. And if you are going to use jargon and your audience groups might not be familiar with them, just take the time to define them. It can just even be in sentence, just the word, comma, a simple definition of it, comma, and then continue on with your writing. And then, adding media, video, images, sometimes audio, can go a long way to convey what you're trying to say. I'll go into rich media now. So like I said, it's not just writing for the web, it's designing content for the web. And so images, some things to keep in mind with images. This is kind of harsh to say, but stock photos are really a waste of time. We've really been trained to ignore them. And so we aren't really drawing much meaning out of them. I mean, I don't know, but the real world, we don't all have access to a professional photographer or a budget to get photos done. So I would say there are a lot of photo repositories out there, some that are, stock photo sites, but you can find photos that are maybe technically stock photo, but are well shot and well kind of framed to be more authentic looking. And so doing that if you can. If you're taking a screenshot of something to maybe explain a feature of your software, your product, take it so that you're focusing on the most essential part, whatever that functionality is that you're showing off or trying to explain. Make sure to provide alternative text for images that are informative. If they're purely decorative, and if you were to, some good advice is look at your webpage and imagine that a screen reader is reading it aloud to you. When you get to an image, is knowing what that image is helpful to the listener? And if it is, then describe it. Screen readers will detect that it's an image and tell the user, image, or this is an image. So when you write the alternative text, don't start with this is an image of. That's going to be redundant. They know it's an image and that what you're writing is alternative text for it. So just go right into what it is. And then infographics are good for sequential or relational information. So kind of step 1, step 2, or, the kind of circular diagrams. Those can be very helpful. For video, video is great if you are trying to convey the feeling of something. So if you have a website for, for a bed and breakfast that you run, or a state park, something like that, part of the purpose of your website is going to be to convey what it's going to be like when you're there, and really, attract people to who you want to attract to. You're like, I think you're really going to enjoy my bed and breakfast because it has this kind of feel to it. Having a video is going to go a long way in conveying that words just, there's only so far you can go with writing descriptively for that. It also supports visual learners, which is a lot of us. If you are going to do video, do provide closed captions. If you can do that manually, that's really the best. I know that I've noticed that YouTube has gotten better and better with the automatic closed captions, but it's definitely not perfect, and there can be some moments where that's really confusing. And that's again, for people who are visually impaired, or and it's good for SEO, and it really, actually, it's common for us, right, to not click that unmute volume button and just look at it with the closed captions. And for English language learners too, like having that additional visual reinforcement of what's being said is very helpful. And then, especially if you are, this is, for in-person things. So a university talking about their program, or you want to make sure that the going back to like the bed and breakfast example, like if you're trying to have a very inclusive environment, think again about your audience and their different backgrounds, and include people who are representative of the different backgrounds that you have, so that they can see themselves in wherever they're going, or using your service, or buying your product, or whatever it might be. And then keep it short. People's thresholds is usually around 2 to 3 minutes for a video. It's pretty short. We have short attention spans on the web. So try and get your point across in that much time. And then a couple of resources to dig into beyond this presentation. The first is a tool that I really like. It's called the Hemingway App, and I can pop it open and show that after this talk. That is a kind of a machine reader that will scan your content and tell you what reading level the writing is at, and also suggest areas where, like, this is this is a run-on sentence, or this is a very long sentence, or this is very complicated, that kind of feedback. I'm having a hard time reading my slides here. It's like a tiny preview of this. Oh, Transcribe. Oh yeah, so that's a transcription service that I learned about recently. I haven't actually tried it out. I've just had it recommended to me from several people. The Conscious Style Guide is really good. Again, it has like a lot of things that are helpful to consider to write in an inclusive way, and sort of the most accurate and up-to-date terminology and phrases for like different demographics, different backgrounds, different situations. And then I have a link here for tools for creating a budget-friendly social media video, because I know that's still a bit of a learning curve for a lot of us, myself included. How do you can feel kind of intimidating to create a video if you've never done that before. So that is it in a nutshell. So if there are any questions, happy to take them, and also happy to do a little quick demo of the Hemingway app, or yeah, anything else people wanted to get into.
I just had one question about something that I often wonder about when I'm writing content is, okay, so you have like a paragraph and you want to link to another site or something in your paragraph, or, you have a paragraph describing like, go to the state park or whatever. Is it better to have the link inside the body of the paragraph so that some words in a sentence are the link and then the sentence just continues? Or is it better to like describe the thing that you're going to link to and then like end the sentence and then have the link be its totally own thing after the paragraph on like a separate line even or something? Like, do people, is there even a difference? Do people like see links when they're inside a paragraph?
It'll definitely stand out more if you're doing the second approach. And so I think it's, I don't know if there's quite a hard and fast rule. It's still a bit subjective, but if you're wanting to give it more attention, then that second approach is going to be the better way to go. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. I don't think anyone else has questions, but so I think if you could do a demo of those tools, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then Rose points out, like, yeah, you could use a button if you wanted even more attention to that, for sure. Yeah. And yeah, underline style in text is still best. I know sometimes we try to stray away from that in designing our sites, but that's an old, well-established pattern that I think we should continue to stick with. Yeah, so I'll open up the Hemingway app and share my screen again. So it's hemingwayapp.com, and here's they start with just an example text, and so one of 11 sentences here is hard to read. We've got some adverbs here that we could get rid of, and yeah, the phrase, passive voice. I feel like I'm back in 8th grade writing class. Yeah, so, and then here we can see it's at a 6th grade level now, so pretty good. There's another tool that I just learned about. I don't know if I can remember the name of it off the top of my head. I think it's something like Write Clearly. Yeah. Which has a browser plugin. I wonder if this is a link to it. No, so this is let me see if I can. I'll have to hunt around for that one. I just learned about that one recently, but apparently, supposedly there's, yeah. So this, I think this is the like product page for it. So you can then, it's a bookmarklet is what it is. So you can get this and drag it up to your bookmark section and then kind of use it to scan a certain page on your site. And it essentially does a very similar thing of just scanning it for readability. So that's what that is. The O transcribe. So you can have an audio file or a YouTube video, and gosh, it's been a while since I used this too. But I believe it's like you can easily kind of pause it and be typing and then pause and then type some more. So it's easier to transcribe things. And then the conscious style guide, this is what it looks like. So, you can learn kind of, yeah, if you have an app that's, around health, and you can learn more about things like, I think we've come a long way around talking about not using phrases that are maybe going to be ableist or kind of disparaging people unknowingly who might have mental health issues, or talking about postpartum depression. So it's just got a lot of information about different topics and like how to talk about those accurately and effectively and respectfully. And then this last one is the slides from a talk that happened at the Nonprofit Technology Conference on creating a budget-friendly social video, and they have a whole like video toolkit links there. So yeah, those are those tools. Looks like there's a couple things in the chat. Is there an average grade level to write for? Yeah, so 8th grade is kind of the general rule of thumb, but really kind of goes back to who your audience is. Sometimes I don't know which icons would be great as representation of certain ideas. Yeah, I've been there for sure. Another good resource for icons is the Noun Project. And there's more and more of these coming up. I've noticed there's like lots of different icon sets out there, but this is great, and you can search for a word like community, and here's a bunch of different icons that come up, and can sort of scan and be like, oh yeah, I really like this icon. And then it has a Creative Commons license, so and it'll tell you how to use it. So for this one, you can use it as long as you're giving credit to the icon's creator, or you could buy it and then just be able to use it freely however you want to. And the list, can that list be shared? The list of resources, I can drop. I'm happy to share these slides too. Actually, I think they're publicly available, so I'll see if I can log out of this.
Yeah, we can post them in the comments on the meetup page as soon as this is over.
Great. And I'll just drop them here in the chat for anyone who's like eager. In J school, we were taught to write for 6th grade level. Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's even, I mean, the lower the better, honestly. For that Bay Area legal site, we could not get it. We tried to get it down to that especially because there's a lot of lower literacy level audience and English language learners, but the topics are so complicated, unfortunately. They're sort of inherent to the subject matter that the best we could really consistently do is like a 7th grade level. So, I mean, and all of this is, you don't want to take this advice to the point where you're writing unnaturally and it's just like, so, and of course you all know your audiences and your materials to kind of do what makes sense for you. And the last thing I'll say is I'm still a very big believer in like keeping the web weird and like you're writing your own blog posts or whatever, and you want to just ramble, I fully support that. And there are sites where, yeah, it's kind of intentionally, maybe it's like an artistic statement to be a little bit obtuse or whatever. You know, I don't think we should take this and make the web completely boring or whatever. Yeah. So yeah. Oh yeah, and Yoast readability tests for 7th grade. Interesting. Yeah. So I guess that range, right? 6th to 8th grade. But again, it's like there's at the end of the day, there's a level of subjectivity, and you don't want to lose your voice and tone and meaning by just getting it to a certain grade level. So yeah. Yeah, Chris, I think we all have the ability to unmute. Yeah, I would love to hear other people's points on this topic.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Clayton. This is great. I really learned a lot. And actually, I have 2 degrees in writing, and of course, never really made money at it in my primary career until I retired and started doing this. But the greatest thing that was ever told me, the greatest suggestion I was ever given was while I was in J school, I was writing like, I had 4 classes doing 10 pages per class per week, and I was just buried and burned out on writing. And my uncle, who's an ad man, I mean, the man graduated Michigan in honors English, wrote ads every day since 1946 till his death. And he said, Chris, write like you speak. If you're ever in question, read what you just wrote. And if you have a hard time getting it out, change it, really edit it up. Because if I can't say it naturally, nobody's going to be able to read it naturally. And that really helped, because I was worried about getting it right. And it's not so much about getting it wrong or right, but it's just making it colloquial, you know. And then of course, yeah, all of the marketing classes I took after college was all about who are you writing for, you know, on the marketing side of things. So again, thank you so much, Clayton. Great information.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. That's a really good point. One thing, this is starting to get beyond the original topic, but also figuring out your brand's persona and your voice and tone there, it really helps a lot too. And one exercise that I really like for that is called a this, not that exercise. And so you can say something, if you're a university, for example, you might say like, we're sophisticated but not pretentious. And I really like, it's fun to do, and it also helps establish these guardrails in a very concrete way of like, write the pretentious example and write the sophisticated example, so you can see like a very clear example of like, this is where we're going too far in this direction, or if it's like, we're funny but not sophomoric, like write the funny copy and then write the like, this is going too far. So because one thing that I found is it's being authentic is super helpful, and sometimes we're kind of afraid to be too personal or colloquial, like you were saying, Chris. And so if you write the kind of the counter example, then it gives you that confidence of like, okay, I can write in this kind of natural way, and this is when I know I've gone too far with it. It just makes your writing so much more interesting than kind of sticking to sort of bland, I don't know, like you sound like any other website and not your own personal voice. Anyone else have anything they wanted to share? Yeah.
I have a question though. So you make these personas and you do these exercises, presumably with the clients. What's the process for, but you're not doing the writing, they are. So what's the process for them then writing it? Do they just go off and write their content, or do you check it, or how would you work these into a meeting with a client, a project with a client?
Yeah, so we'll do like hands-on workshops. So we'll take, so for the Bay Area Legal Services group, what we did, we took some existing pages and I had them we had them printed out ahead of time. And then we took, just like a red marker, like you would in grade school at being the professor, and just marked it up. And we're like, okay, cutting these sentences, rewriting this. You could do it on a Google Doc too, and put it in like suggesting mode and do it that way. And so there's a few formats, like some is like breakout groups where people do that, and then I'll do that with, or I'll do one as an example. And so I will actually write it, and I'll usually get it a little bit wrong because I'm not the subject matter expert for the client's site, but I am like effectively demonstrating these writing for the web skills and being like, okay, we can cut this. And this is like, oh, you listed this out in commas. That can be an ordered list. This is a good spot for a subheading. And then they can kind of see the process that way. Yeah. But I like writing. So I actually just did this. Oh yeah, with the SICE, we're going to work on this. So it's this university site, and I actually took an article and not like heavily rewrote it, but just like lightly added some headings and pulled out a block quote that I think would be interesting. Because I don't know, sometimes I get a little envious of like, it's fun to help people write better, but I kind of miss writing it myself. So sometimes I'll just write. And it won't be the final copy, but it'll give people an idea of how to rewrite their content for the web. Writing for a science journal, that's different.
I do have a little struggle with a client right now whose original site didn't have a lot of content, and then I'm part of a team that's rebuilding this site, and we keep saying, okay, I need you to give me some content for this page. Okay. And we've even gone so far as to taking the old content and say, why don't you start with this and give us 3 more points? So it's just kind of, sometimes to Claire's point, it's kind of a pulling teeth kind of thing.
Yeah. And there can be a million reasons for that. But if one of the reasons is that they're intimidated by it, then like just getting in a co-writing session together can really help. Or that's another reason I'll write stuff sometimes, is I'll be like, I'll just take a quick pass at it myself. And then it really gets people into the writing mode, because then they're like, no, we don't want that. That's terrible. And they like write it. Like, okay, great. Now you're finally writing. I think since I use realistic content in wireframes as much as I can, I think one of my favorite moments was it was for a preschool curriculum website, and we had a design where we had a slogan on the homepage, and I didn't want to just put lorem ipsum in for that placeholder. So I just like having read their content, I was like, no, this is kind of a catchy slogan. So I just wrote it in there and showed it to them. I'm like, this is just kind of proto content. It's not the final draft. Since you don't have a slogan yet, I figured I'd just put this in there. They're like, oh, we really love this, actually. Can we use it? And I'm like, yeah, go for it. So like, that was fun. I was pretty proud of, like, I should have charged them for it. I just came up with their slogan. You get paid like thousands of dollars to come up with the slogan. So.
I often feel that I don't have like the authority or like I'm not qualified to tell people that their writing is not suitable, but having guidelines like you need to put more headers in, or put in a block quote or something, I find very helpful, because that's something you can't argue about, like you just need more headers. So I often like will ask clients to look at the structure of their pages, but not the actual language as such. I guess I could just run it through one of those tools. Would that be a way of like detecting the reading level and figuring out how to change the actual text?
Yeah, that's a good starting point. I think that the like Hemingway editor is similar. I find it a similar value to like some of these tools like the Wave accessibility checker, where it's like, it's still at the end of the day, this is like a machine learning kind of thing. So it's more to just kind of give you an overall sense of like, oh, I'm writing at a 12 or I mean, I've seen higher, like I'm writing at like a college level and I want to be writing at a 7th grade level clue and then taking it. But yeah, which related question in the chat is my background in copywriting. Well, my background's kind of all over the place. I graduated with a major in humanities, which was mostly communications. It was communications, Spanish, and sociology. And so I was a teacher first, and then I changed careers and became a web developer. But then at the agency I was at, since I was kind of more a junior level developer, I kept finding like the biggest problems or like the biggest difference in our clients' websites was the content. And I just noticed people were not writing very well. So we'd be designing these beautiful sites, but if the site is this whole wall of text, it really is like one of the biggest differentiators of like if your site is really working for your users is the content itself. So I just learned more and more. So I'm more self-taught than like formally trained as a copywriter. And still like I do like content strategy primarily. The copywriting, I don't really get paid straight up to do copywriting. I just do it when within the workshops and wireframes, kind of incidentally almost. Is there a word count range that keeps readers engaged? In other words, are readers turned off by too many words at a certain point? Yeah, I guess that one's kind of hard to answer broadly. I mean, if it's an informative page about like a product, then yeah, actually the more brief, the better. If I can find it, I will send it to Claire to post. But there was this great study about, it was a beach resort and they did some A/B testing. I think there were actually 3 versions, and they one was, I don't know, it's been a while now, so I don't know if I can get the details right, but basically one was like very flowery, like here's all the amazing things you can do at our resort. And then the other one's just like the bare bones, like just what you need to know. And that one had so many more conversions than the like, here's all the cool things you can do here. Because it's people are just hunting, you know, they're just the wolves looking for like, all right, how do I book my time here at this resort? So yeah, I think generally brevity is better, but if you're, I don't know, I mean, there's still always like the science journal or the, I don't know, there's always exceptions to the rule, I guess. And as far as a word count though, I don't know. I don't know if there is a general guideline the way there is like with the 7th grade reading level kind of best practice, honestly. If anyone else is familiar with those kind of guidelines, would love to hear it. And that's a good, I'll go research that because now I'm curious.
I always just went by as few as possible to get your point across and then no more.
Mm-hmm.
there's a store in my neighborhood that has a sign on the door that says something like, "Welcome to our shop, where after the first time you visit, you are part of our family." And that always makes me laugh because like they didn't want to just say, "Welcome, you're part of our family." They wanted to make it absolutely clear that only after the first time that you visit and they've actually met you would they consider you a part of the family. And it seems like they could have cut about half of the text out of that sign.
It's kind of endearing, though. Yeah.
You can print out a new one and tell them that now that you're part of the family, you want to push your opinion on them. And here's a better sign.
I think it's partly the subject matter too. Like I subscribe to Wired magazine, and some of the articles are real short, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can read this while I'm waiting for this or that, and the others are longer ones. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna set this aside. I'm gonna read it, this evening or something. So it kind of depends on, if it's a big, long, in-depth report on something. Yeah, I'm gonna want it to be longer because I'm gonna want to know that you've done the work.
Yeah, and yeah, Chris, to your point in the comments about like if someone will read it at all. So this is another thing that it's like having images with helpful captions or having subheadings or having quotes like there's kind of there's two things going on. One is if people in their first pass read, say they see an infographic that you've put together that's really helpful, and they've read 4 out of the 10 subheadings, and they've read a couple of the block quotes because they've just skimmed and scanned, you've still informed your reader at that point, even though they didn't actually read the whole article. So that's something kind of comforting. And then the second thing is that it always goes back to that, like, we're hunting around because we're analyzing whether we want to give it our full time. So if you have a long article and you've broken it into the subheadings, then you're cluing me in as the reader of like, oh, okay, they're actually, because especially when we're experts in a certain field, we've read a lot of the stuff over and over again, and you don't want to reread an article that's rehashed a point that you are already familiar with. But if you scan it and you're like, oh, they're actually getting to something new here, I didn't really think about this, or I didn't know this information about prairie dogs in Colorado, then yeah, then you'll bookmark it, like Sally said. Like, I'll go back and read this whole thing with higher fidelity when I have the time to. Pinterest links to recipes are the worst. Yes. I recently saw on Twitter someone say, like, I'm gonna write a murder mystery novel about a serial killer who leaves clues to all of their murders in the intro text of recipes, and doesn't get caught for 15 years because nobody actually reads them. I thought that was pretty funny. And yeah, Pinterest.
I read someone said we should put all of our national secrets in there because nobody's reading it.
Yes. Oh man. I also read some statistic about the World Bank did some kind of like analytics review of all of their sites and found it was something shocking. Like 30% of the PDFs that they have on their site have 0 hits. Not a single person has opened up the PDF. And then, another like 40% have got, 10 or few page visits, something like that. It's pretty
I think that's one of those cases of know your audience.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't know about anybody else. That's kind of one of the hardest things about building websites for people is convincing them it's not for them. It's for their audience. And, it's like on my website, I don't even mention WordPress. Nobody cares. They don't care. They just want a website. We'll talk about WordPress for hours and hours and hours, but the guy with the shop that just wants his shop online, he does not care.
Yes, loving all the Pinterest hate. Feel the pain. I think we've run to the, oh, is there a particular font size recommended? Yeah. Oh yeah, I just read a really good article about this. Oh man, I wonder if it's still in my browser history. I don't think it is. Oh, I will. It was quite provocative. It was advocating for, I think 20 point font, or sometimes even more. I think it was from the Marvel app, which is like a prototyping tool. The body, oh, I found it. Your body text is too small. Yeah, this is great. I will put this in the Zoom chat. This was a really good read and made some really interesting points. And yeah, my microphone was weird. I've looked into it. I need to just like set aside a whole evening to just figure it out. I'm on Linux and there's things going on. So apologies for that. I give all my bills to my 83-year-old mother to navigate. Oh, that is a great, yeah. If she has trouble with navigating this site, my UX needs work. Yeah, that is a great idea for sure.
Always do the mom test.
Yeah. Oh, oops. I sent the body text link as a direct message to someone. There it is. Yeah, and you can also do like usability tests on your content. And just to have someone give them a task of, you need to find this kind of information so that you can do such and such, and have them kind of walk you through it. And if you can get them to talk out loud as much as possible and be like, okay, I'm reading this title. This looks like I'm on the right page. I'm going to scan down here. What's too small? Okay. Oh, and then yeah, look, they're pros at this, right? They're bolding, they're using the digits, they're using lots of subheadings. Now I'm curious though, like if I was to just select all of this, I wonder what grade level it's at.
I was hoping they didn't have 20 points read assigned. I was hoping I would say like 18, but it's 20 at 768 and higher.
As I get older and reading things on my phone, I'm finding I like the bigger fonts.
Oh my gosh, you are not kidding. It's like every year I'm bumping the fonts up.
Stacy, what did you say that baseline was?
They have 20 pixels, which I would say is breaking the rules, but I didn't read this whole article yet. They have a 20 pixel font size at 768 pixels wide. They have 18 when they're smaller pixels, which don't adjust well for accessibility on some older browsers.
If you set your body text at 20 or whatever, and then do everything in rems, that should fix that, right, Stacy? Or no?
Yes, but they didn't do that. Yeah.
yeah, at the end here, I was like, 58 pixels? That can't be true. And so I checked, and yeah, that's not actually true. So if you go to the site, it's like, yeah, this is, this is 58. But when you get to their blog,
That
it's-
Van Schneider one?
yeah, it's what is this? 20. So I feel like they were a little misleading in their article about that. I was like, that can't be true. No one's doing that. That's too far. So yeah.
I wonder if they only tested like that first landing page body type. Because if
Mhm.
you go to an article, yeah, it's much smaller. But on the homepage, it's probably using viewport widths. So on my monitor, I took up the whole 27 inches and it's 45 pixels on that first landing page, that the body copy. But if I go to any other page, it's smaller.
Again, what are you referring to, Stacy? Are you looking at this? Your body text is too small?
At that article, one of the last samples, well, okay, one of the last samples in the who's going bigger website section, where they talk about it goes from 20 to 58. Thank you. The last one is what Clayton's showing right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So in this, they're saying some people go all the way up to 50 pixels. And then if you go there, if you go to the main site, I think this is 58, right? But
It was
if you
45
go into,
at my screen size.
okay,
Yeah. But anything else, if you go to view bio here or full bio here, it's much smaller.
yeah, it's back to 20.
Clayton, Lena had a question at 7:48 that I think got skipped. If you can scroll back in chat and see it.
Oh, sure, yeah.
May I ask a question? Sorry. Hello?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I'm wondering, when you do the web design for your clients, of course, you will design the layout, the fonts, and the color, everything. That's for sure, images. But for the content, maybe your clients may not necessarily very clear in their mind, including the content. For example, you ask him his company or product service, what kind of a vision or mission they have. They may not necessarily so clear at the beginning. Do you ask them to provide you the document, and when you read it, you find it's not good for your web? Do you kick them back to go let them rewrite it again? How do you do this process, especially for the content, I mean, the writing part? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say for me and our clients, it's we usually don't have that high level of oversight of their content. If they're writing things that are off. I don't know. I'm trying to think of when that's happened, though. I think we've just been fortunate that after going through these kind of activities together, that doesn't really come up too much. But I mean, they're really the owners of their content in the end. I haven't been on a project where they've they've given, where we've had that role, I guess, of like really that we're the copy editors. That's usually handled in-house. But I should say, I mean, I think a lot of the people on this call are maintaining their own websites and might be like small businesses, and so a smaller team. Whereas I'm usually working with a little bit larger nonprofits that have a whole communications team. So they have people within their organization that are more owning the editorial voice and making sure that it meets their mission and goals. So I know that's not a very good answer, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, understandable. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I found the question from Lena. Do you take copy written by clients and then break it up into subheads, quotes, graphics, or do you advise them to do that themselves? Yeah, we'll do those like co-writing workshops sometimes, but then outside of the workshop, it's really up to them to do that themselves. I mean, content strategy has become more valued over time, and it's definitely been easier to convince clients to include that in their budget for their websites for us to do some of these trainings. But it's still a lower, well, we don't always get all of the content strategy work that we want to with clients, which, I mean, I understand you have a limited budget, you have to prioritize things. So yeah, it's best is teach them how to do it and then let them do it. Yeah. Well, I promised my family that I would get done by 7 so we can have dinner there. But it's been a really good conversation, and appreciate everybody's time. And thanks again for being patient with my time zone mix up. So,
Thanks so much for joining us, Clayton. It was really great information.
yeah, take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.